Who I am is not important. All you need to know is this. For the past 5 years, I've been part of the NASA team that looks after the Voyager 1 probe as it travels further and further away from the Earth. We have helped keep it functional for decades after its expected lifetime and at a distance of 14.5 billion miles away from Earth. It really is a marvel of human engineering. If you're interested in our work, you've probably read in recent news about the unexplained malfunctions that the craft has been suffering from. It's true that the probe is experiencing difficulties, but that's not even half of it. God, it's not even a malfunction at all. Blame the government suits for that lie. The probe's orientation in space is managed by a system called the AACS, which stands for Attitude Articulation and Control System. Normally, the AACS makes sure that the Voyager has its antenna pointed to Earth, so that it can both send and receive signals. That is how we get the data the probe collects. And that is how we make sure it will stay functional for as long as possible. 2 weeks ago, we started receiving information from the AACS that simply could not be true. We checked, then double-checked, but there was no mistake. The data we were getting contained a single, confounding piece of information. The probe had stopped. It was, to put it simply, hanging motionless in space. We scrambled to find the source of the error. Had the AACS broken down, sending us flawed information? Was it some other system that had broken? Thankfully, the fault protection software hadn't triggered. That would have shut down all but the most essential functions of the probe. As it was, we could run all the tests and diagnostics we needed. No one considered even for a second that the readings were correct. That would be ludicrous. But day after day, we found nothing, as far as we could see. There was no malfunction at all. Nothing had broken or gone wrong, for all we could tell. The AACS was working just fine and the probe was, indeed, just hanging in space. NASA higher-ups berated us and told us to look again. Probes don't just stop, they told us. There's something we're missing here. There has to be. A monotonous, unfulfilling week followed. More tests, more diagnostics, same result. Every time, in desperation and at our wits' end, we attempted to instruct the probe to rotate or start moving again. The thrusters complied, but the Voyager remained stubbornly in place. Our approach to the situation changed. We shut down all the systems aboard the Voyager and, going one by one, switched them back on and checked their functionality down to the smallest detail, only moving on to the next after we had made absolutely sure that they were running without any issues. Then, a breakthrough, without our prompting. The onboard plasma wave instrument, essentially a sensor that detects waves of electrons in the interstellar space that the probe travels through, had switched back on and begun sending data to us. Understandably, this caused quite a stir, equipment turning on and off of its own accord. Now that was a problem. There was a feeling of doom in the air. Suddenly, the idea of losing the Voyager 1, after so many decades, seemed all too real. The data from the plasma wave instrument can be listened to, since the waves it detects take place on frequencies that the human ear can detect. Naturally, we decided we should listen to whatever recordings it had sent back. From the very beginning, the data was bizarre. Normally, the sound of the plasma wave instrument is a monotonous, eerie hum, the background noise of the interstellar void. The recording we received was nothing like that. Rather, it was a series of rapid spikes, a bleeping, wailing sound, irregular, punctuated by bouts of almost silence. Our team was dumbfounded. What did it mean? Another faulty reading, a space anomaly. At this point, we were coming to terms with losing the probe altogether. I guess it wasn't that far-fetched. Voyager 1 was operating decades past its expected lifetime. It had always been a possibility that it would simply break down one day. As we sat in the listening room, pondering and arguing, one of my colleagues, a genius and one-time child prodigy named McKinley, suddenly sat up straight. I looked over at him. His face was wrapped with fascination. God above. I've got it. It's Morse code. There was a second of silence. Ridiculous. Someone sneered from across the room. How could it? Listen to it, McKinley insisted. The spikes, the punctuation, the breaks. It's Morse, I tell you. He grabbed a paper and pencil and began playing the recording back again, mumbling under his breath. P-E-R, they. After a few minutes, he sat up and lifted the paper into the air. Perispera ad astra, he declared victoriously. The room exploded with frantic activity. People shouting over each other, asking questions, voicing confusion, drawing hypotheses. That phrase, perispera ad astra, was known to us all. When the Voyager probes were launched, NASA attached something called the Golden Records to them. A phonograph record meant as a message to any extraterrestrials they might encounter out in the void. The records contained everything from music to the sounds of nature to recorded greetings in 55 languages. And, last but not least, there was a Morse code message, per aspera ad astra, through hardship to the stars, a motivational quip sent to our interstellar neighbors. More recordings came in. Even as we argued among ourselves, these readings were impossible. They couldn't be real. We were receiving all the sounds stored on the golden records, distortedly played back to us through the readings of the plasma wave instrument, birdsong, music, even the sound of Carl Sagan's son saying hello. With each reading, the room grew more quiet, more subdued, as the truth dawned on us all. Someone, something out there, was listening to the golden recording. And then the AACS went haywire. Suddenly, there was movement where, just a second before, there had been none. Our systems were flooded with locational data. And my heart plummeted as I realized what was happening. The Voyager had started moving again, at speeds no human creation should be capable of. It was hurtling through space, and it was heading back towards the Earth. I understand now. I understand why this is happening. The recordings aren't the only thing on that disc. There's so much more. Diagrams of human biology, of our culture, of the solar system. Dear God, it all leads right back to Earth.